Scientists have discovered a new type of orca roaming the southernmost oceans, and they believe it may even be a new species.
In early 2024, deep in the icy waters of the far south, a group of scientists made a discovery that shook everything we thought we knew about orcas. At first glance, it looked like a familiar sight, a black and white predator slicing through the water. But then, something felt off.
They're calling them Type D or sub-Antarctic killer whales. Their heads are a bit more rounded and less sleek than normal orcas, and their dorsal fins are more narrow and pointed.
The markings weren't textbook. The behavior didn't match known patterns. This wasn't just another killer whale pod. What they witnessed sparked a quiet storm across the global marine research community.
This is truly one of the most amazing encounters any of us have witnessed in the wild.
Archived sonar logs were pulled. Decades-old footage was reanalyzed. Whispers of a lost subspecies, or something entirely new, surfaced for the first time in years. Could this be a new species of orca hiding in plain sight? Or is it something even stranger? One thing is clear. If a creature like this has stayed hidden for so long, what else is the ocean keeping from us? The rise of Type D orcas. It all kicked off in January 2024, somewhere near the bottom of the world, off the rough, stormy coast of Cape Horn. A team of scientists was out there on a pretty standard mission, just tracking marine life, maybe spotting a few familiar whales or dolphins. But that plan quickly changed. While scanning the water, their sonar picked up something unusual. It wasn't a whale song they recognized. The signals were off. Naturally, they decided to follow it. And then, cutting through the wind and thick mist, something surfaced. What they saw wasn't your usual pod of orcas. These ones looked different. Very different. Their heads were more rounded, kind of swollen looking. The white eye patches were so small you could almost miss them. And their dorsal fins were curved back like a wave. The whole pod moved in a way that felt strange too. Tighter, quieter, more careful. The team on board instantly knew this wasn't just a random variation. They were staring at something that had only existed in blurry old photos and secondhand stories. Until now. Some of those stories go all the way back to 1955, when a group of odd-looking orcas washed up on a beach in New Zealand. People took pictures. Marine biologists at the time raised eyebrows. The whales didn't fit any known classification. Over the decades, similar-looking orcas were reported in icy corners of the Southern Ocean, near the Crozet Islands, around Antarctica. But no one could get close enough to study them properly. Scientists eventually gave them a name, Type D. But even then, they were more rumor than reality. Most figured it was just a rare physical variation, or maybe a photographic illusion. But in 2024, those doubts finally disappeared. Not only were researchers able to get clear visuals, but they also collected environmental DNA, tiny traces the whales left behind in the water. That allowed them to do something no one had done before. Compare the DNA from this living pod to old samples collected during that 1955 stranding. The match was strong. These weren't just weird-looking whales. Their DNA was radically different from other known orca types. In fact, it was different enough that scientists now think they might have split from the main orca family tree around 200,000 to 400,000 years ago. That's not just a little deviation. That's ancient history. These whales have been on their own for longer than humans have been farming. Unlike other orcas, which are grouped by what they eat or where they live, Type D whales seem to be in a category of their own. Their teeth are smaller and more worn down. Their skulls are shaped differently. And their DNA tells a story of deep, long-term isolation. Most orcas are social, loud, and curious. Type D orcas are the opposite. They stick together in small pods, stay away from boats, and hunt deep underwater where they're barely seen. Add in the fact that they live in some of the roughest, coldest waters on Earth, and it's easy to see how they managed to avoid discovery for so long. Even now, they're still kind of a mystery. Despite the footage and DNA evidence, there's no official name for them yet. The Society for Marine Mammalogy hasn't recognized them as a new species, at least not yet, but the pressure's building, and not just because it would be cool to give them a scientific name. If Type D gets recognized as a full species, that could open up the door to international protections. That means laws to help guard their territory, limit industrial fishing in their range, and maybe even fund deeper research into their behavior and biology. Here's the issue, though. We still don't know how many of them there are. So far, they've only been seen a handful of times. There was a sighting in 2004, then another in 2014, and a couple more near Cape Horn in 2017 and 2019. Every time, they stayed far from boats and disappeared fast. Based on how few sightings there have been and how small the pods seem, some researchers think the entire population might be under 300 individuals. That's a dangerously low number, especially if they're already dealing with inbreeding, environmental stress, and competition for food. In fact, that's one of the scariest parts. The DNA samples show signs of a genetic bottleneck, which means this population has been shrinking for a long time. They've likely been isolated for thousands of years, and their small numbers make them vulnerable to all kinds of threats: overfishing, climate shifts, even underwater noise pollution. And because they've stayed off the radar for so long, there's still so much we don't know. We don't know where they go to breed. We don't fully understand what they eat year-round. We don't know if they travel beyond their current range. Every answer leads to more questions. That's why researchers are throwing everything they've got into finding out more. They're using environmental DNA sampling to test ocean water for genetic traces, drone footage to watch pods without disturbing them, and satellite imaging to try mapping their range. It's a tech-heavy race to understand this species before something pushes them past the point of recovery. Because as fascinating as they are, Type D orcas aren't invincible. They're rare, they're quiet, and they've been surviving on the edge of the map for a very long time. Whether they keep surviving will depend on how quickly we can catch up to their story. But knowing they exist is only half the battle. Protecting them has proven to be an even bigger challenge. Global conservation nightmare. Now that scientists have finally confirmed the existence of Type D orcas, you'd think the next step would be pretty straightforward. Give them a name, draw up protections, and start tracking their population. But it's not that simple. The problem is, these whales don't just live far away. They live in a kind of legal and scientific shadow. Because they haven't been formally classified as a separate species or subspecies, Type D orcas currently don't qualify for any species-specific conservation status under major frameworks like the IUCN Red List or CITES. That means they're not officially endangered, threatened, or even recognized at all. And without that recognition, they're basically invisible on paper, even if they're very real in the ocean. This puts conservationists in a tough spot. You can't protect what isn't named, and you can't name what you haven't studied enough. The bureaucracy of taxonomy is slow, and the science behind it requires a full holotype specimen, which is hard to come by when your subject is a reclusive whale that lives in the stormiest corners of the southern hemisphere. So right now, these orcas are floating in limbo. Marine biologists know they exist. Geneticists know they're unique. But international law doesn't know what to do with them. It's like trying to build a fence around a ghost. Meanwhile, the threats around them are growing fast. One of the biggest concerns is industrial-scale krill fishing in the Southern Ocean. Krill might be tiny, but they're absolutely critical to the food web down there. Whales, seals, penguins, so many species depend on them. Type D orcas are believed to hunt fish and squid rather than marine mammals. But krill is a key part of the chain that supports everything else. And when krill stocks drop due to overfishing or warming waters, the whole ecosystem starts to tip. In March 2023, scientists raised serious alarms over krill harvesting in Antarctica, warning that it could have ripple effects we don't fully understand, especially for species we've barely begun to study. Type D may be one of the most at risk, simply because it's so hard to monitor their food sources or migration routes in real time. And then there's sonar. Naval exercises and seismic testing in deep waters have long been criticized for disturbing marine mammals, particularly whales. Type D orcas, with their low-frequency vocalizations and preference for quieter, deeper waters, might be especially vulnerable to acoustic disruption. We already know that loud underwater noise can disorient whales, interfere with communication, and in some cases even cause physical harm. But since Type D avoids contact and rarely breaches near boats, we don't know how often they're being impacted, or how badly, and that's part of the nightmare. The silence around this species isn't just biological, it's political, it's institutional. It's the kind of silence that lets bad things happen unnoticed. International cooperation is another hurdle. Most governments don't even have these orcas on their radar. Their range crosses vast, sparsely monitored waters between countries like Chile, Argentina, Australia, and even parts of New Zealand's southern reaches. But since we still don't know exactly where they breed or spend their seasons, creating protected zones is a guessing game. And unlike more visible species, there's no public pressure to act. Type D orcas don't star in documentaries or pop up in viral drone footage. They're not symbols of climate awareness like polar bears or coral reefs. They're quiet, hidden, and incredibly easy to ignore, which makes them incredibly easy to lose. Still, there's some hope on the tech front. Scientists are turning to tools that weren't even available a decade ago. Environmental DNA sampling is giving us glimpses into where these whales have been by detecting genetic traces in water. Low-frequency hydrophones are now being deployed to pick up their subtle calls, which were often missed by standard monitoring equipment. And new AI models are being trained to recognize Type D orca calls from complex soundscapes, even when they're buried beneath waves and interference. Satellite mapping of eDNA hotspots is also helping pinpoint areas where they may be traveling, even if they're never seen. It's a slow puzzle, but the pieces are starting to come together. Still, no matter how advanced the tech gets, none of it matters without recognition. Until Type D orcas are officially classified, everything remains unofficial. No protections, no funding, no conservation mandates. Just data sitting in research papers, waiting for someone to say, this species matters. And if it took us this long to recognize something as massive and distinct as Type D, it raises a chilling possibility. What else are we still missing? What else is out there? What other species, large or small, are gliding beneath the waves completely unnoticed? Because Type D orcas aren't some microscopic worm hiding at the bottom of a trench. They're full-size apex predators, some of them over 20 feet long. And somehow, they went unconfirmed by modern science for decades. That's not just surprising, it's a little bit unsettling. It makes you wonder how incomplete our picture of the ocean really is. According to NOAA, more than 80% of the world's oceans remain unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. That's not an exaggeration. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about Earth's seafloor. And the Southern Ocean, where Type D was spotted, might be the most mysterious of them all. The weather there is brutal. The waves are enormous, and research ships can only access those waters during short seasonal windows. So it's no surprise that weird, undocumented sightings have been popping up there for years. From strange whale calls no one could trace, to blurry sonar images of massive creatures moving beneath ice shelves. Some of it dismissed, some of it quietly stored away, waiting for context. Type D may have just given that context. Even beyond whales, we're constantly stumbling onto new marine life in the deep. In 2023, researchers exploring the Clarion-Clipperton Zone in the Pacific Ocean discovered over 5,000 previously undocumented species in a single expedition. Many of them so unique, they may require new classifications altogether. And they weren't looking for large animals. They were scraping the seafloor. Imagine what we're still missing in the mid-waters, where giant squid, deep-diving sharks, and cold-adapted cetaceans roam beyond the reach of our most advanced equipment. The more we look, the more we find. And the more we find, the more we realize how much we've missed. Even old legends are being re-examined through this new lens. In the past, strange sea creatures described by sailors or indigenous communities were often written off as exaggerations or myths. But with each new discovery, from the giant squid, once thought to be pure fiction, to entire whale species spotted for the first time only in the last 2 decades, those old stories are starting to look a little less far-fetched. It makes you think twice about all those tales of shadowy whales, sea serpents, or massive creatures glimpsed just once before vanishing into the depths. Maybe they weren't inventions. Maybe they were glimpses of something we just didn't understand yet. So when researchers confirmed Type D in 2024, it didn't just give us a new whale to study. It cracked open the door to something much bigger. A reminder that the ocean still holds secrets. That Earth, for all our satellites and deep-sea drones, is still hiding life we've never named. And if something as large, distinct, and intelligent as a Type D Orca can remain in hiding this long, who's to say it's the last? The ocean has always guarded its secrets, and this may be one of the biggest yet. If discoveries like this are still happening today, imagine what else lies undiscovered beneath the waves. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Could this be just the beginning of what the deep sea has been hiding all along?